All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. I am Jeremy, and I will be leading our Lunch and Learn today. We do have one pre-submitted question so far from Elon, so we will get to that first in just a minute. But if anyone else has additional questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, and I will be happy to get to any other questions we may have. I'll get started in just a minute. Give a minute for anyone else to join in. And if you have any questions, please post them so we'd be happy to help out.
Hey everybody, I just got a message saying chat disabled. I'm working on it right now. Normally we are in the same lobby, so I'm just going to see if I can figure out why it might be disabled. Apologies on that end. Should be just 1 moment.
All right. Well, while we hopefully try to get the chat up, um, I will go ahead and get started with our first pre-submitted question. You can at least work with the Q&A section since that's working if the regular chat is not working, like Andy is using right now. But first we'll work on Elon's question. So Elon asked, if we have three reports with a report with three different date filters, how can a user choose which filter is displayed on the report from the page view? And how can we configure the report to show all data fields when the filter value is empty? Elon, I'll give you an opportunity to talk if you needed to further expand, but I got a couple things I think I can show you that'll help achieve what you're looking for here.
Okay, great.
Um, so we do have a few different ways that we can adjust report filters and things. First that I have, I think may not be exactly what you're looking for, but it can apply sometimes. So if we add a filter, I'm just going to use this sample from a training project that I have. If I throw a filter on here, I'll just do a greater than date. Um, you actually have runtime behavior on a filter. And by default, it's not runtime editable, which means we can't change it when we're looking at the filter. But if you change it to runtime editable, what that means is I can configure this filter as like what default I want the filter to be. So by default, I want it to be this. I can set that up right away. But then when a user is looking at the report, they'll actually have this little like pill bar up here where you
Oh,
so sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just got kicked, so I just want to make sure. We can be heard. Okay. All right, back to what I was saying. So we can adjust filters from here when we're looking at them. So if you have like a filter that you add and you have it to be runtime editable, then we can go onto this filter and you can change. So a user has this ability to go ahead and change whatever they want to filter it by um, to display something different if they want to change the filter on the fly. And then they can apply it, it'll apply directly. However, I don't think this applies to showing no, like no values. It's playing around with this a bit. I don't think I can make, at least not on dates. I don't think I can make this value null because even if I delete this, it automatically repopulates with the most recent choice. And I assume that's one of the things you wanted, right? The ability to just clear a filter completely.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's a little bit limited there. So in that case, that if that doesn't apply, we won't worry about that. The other thing we can do, we actually talked about this in a previous Lunch and Learn a little bit, for someone that had a slightly different but kind of similar goal in mind. But there's a topic called flow run parts that we can build into a page that will allow a form to appear. So kind of like if you picture this, there would be a form at the top instead of all these tiles. And I can choose something on that form, whether that be drop downs or I can fill in a text box, and I can use the output of whatever I fill out on this form when they hit the submit button on it to automatically filter my report. Does that sound a little bit closer to what you were thinking?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, because I know, like you were saying, for non-date fields, you can allow all the fields to be visible if there's no filters on it. I was just wondering if there was an easier way to do it, or if I would have to use like a flow run part or something to build it out. But it looks like there isn't.
Yeah, I don't think naturally there is. I think the idea that you'd have to add here, if I set up an account, just throw created on date and email address in there. And then, yeah, if I wanted to filter for my created on date, um, even if I did this, yeah, I think it would have to be, I think that it would have to be this way. If I add my created on date filter, and then I would need it to get values from other reports, um, and set that up like in this way. Uh, yeah, I think that's the only way to do it if you want to allow null results, although I'm not even seeing that. Let me make sure this isn't. I don't even see what I normally. Sorry. Email address. I did email address contains. It's even then, if I do email address contains, I have this ability to show all data when filter value is empty.
Right,
But on dates, I don't even have that ability.
right.
Um, hmm. Yeah, I don't know if it can. I don't know if there is. I might have to ask, um, ask in our internal channels and see if anyone else maybe knows if I can make a date filter allow null results just to display everything.
And kind
I
of,
didn't.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
picking that, if you were to have multiple filters on a report and when you go back to like the page view of it and you see those little pills, is there a way to pick and choose which filter you want to like allow on there because I was struggling to get it to like if I don't want to use two of the filters and only one of the filters, how can I check box like, for it to display the filter that I want to select or the user wants to select?
Right. That's where I'm wondering. I don't since it seems at the moment at least to me there's no way to actually allow this filter to be null, then I don't know if we can do that.
Okay.
Let me ask. I will ask and get back to you. I do have your email from when you uh signed up for this, registered for this. I'll have to get back to you on that because I'll ask and see if someone gets a response to me before this is over. And you're still in the call, then I can definitely come back to you. But for now, I'm gonna have to ask and then just reach out to you afterwards because it seems like at least it's not obvious to me at the moment.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hmm. Okay. Right. My next question, we actually do have one more pre-submitted question. That says how to load CSV file into database, more specifically, how to map the columns. Shan, I will give you the opportunity to talk if you want to elaborate a little bit more on your question for me.
Hello. Yeah,
Hello.
this is Sean. Um, I got a task in the work to load the CSV file into a database. I can see my clicks template, which is a Excel file. They have 200 columns. So
Hmm.
user steps is called import Excel and CSV file by column names. I can see the mapping, the column mapping, but if I choose the CSV, the mapping is not there. Even I choose different delimiter, like a column or space, it doesn't work. I don't know what can trigger the decision to read that file and loading that columns.
Okay. So
The steps left is called import Excel or CSV's column names.
this one?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So import Excel or CSV by column names. Right. And then what do you, so this is where you're importing your Excel, and then what are you doing
Yeah,
with it afterwards?
from afterward, come to the input data. The input file type is a CSV, and CSV's the I choose the tab, the file is yes,
Okay.
and the number of column is I see. The column
Use it
for example
200
200,
earlier.
but it is not loading. And the output data type is we defined by ourselves as
Right.
based on the database table structure.
Right. I'll just use a
Yeah,
sample that I have for now.
Yeah. So then this column mapping part, is it because 200 is our manually to do it. That's quite difficult. I just don't
Right.
know.
Got it. Okay. One second.
Before that, we need a step is called input file.
You said input file.
Yeah. Oh, it's a form. Sorry. That is different.
Oh, you have a form for inputting the file. Okay. I'm just sorry. I'm looking at our documentation because I'm not as familiar with this particular step and what it's expected to do, just to try to help. Um, um, hmm, okay. Yeah, I don't think I'm the best equipped. I'm actually being told that uh, we actually had someone that just submitted a support question regarding this morning.
Yes, it's me.
Oh, okay. So that's even better. If it was for you, my guess is they're going to be better help on this because it may either one, there maybe just be a step that's needed to help set that up better.
Okay.
Or there may be like an alternative way that they'd be able to help with for getting these like columns set up properly. Or
Okay.
possibly even a DT to get that figured out if there's something missing here. I could definitely fiddle around with this, but it might just take a while, and I don't even know if I would
Okay.
get to the right answer. I think the support team will definitely be able to better help you with this one.
Okay. And we have a related question is sometimes we get the data in the CSV could be different. Can decision help to automatically find out whether it's a tab or column or something else to separate the data, the column. Yeah.
Right, yeah. I would think just on initial thought, there would be some you'd have to play around with like looking at the outputs of these different CSVs if there's a clear like way that it distinguishes those differences. Um, that way, like you can tell. I think from my thought would be it would be a test of saying like, let me input a CSV that's delimited by commas, one that's got tabs, and see if the outputs look different. Because from there you may be able to just set up a rule that says that can check that output and say if it's a comma, go to this import that's set up for the comma delimiter. And if it's a tab, go to this step that's set up for the tab delimiter and so on. But it would have to be, I don't have a good example on me at the moment, but I think it would just have to be looking at those outputs and seeing, is this output have a field that I can evaluate in a rule to check between those two items? I think just a quick test of checking an output and seeing if there's a clear way to set that rule up would be the easiest.
Okay, thank
And then
you.
if not, you may be able to get more answers while you're working on that, while they're working on the support ticket related to this.
Okay, thanks.
All right. All right, so I had a few questions that have come up in the Q&A section. Give me 1 second to get that ready, and then we'll answer those next. Okay, great. Andy, I'll allow you to talk. You said something about no sound. Are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I guess you were, you after the previous question, previous to Sean, that is, you had muted yourself for a little bit, like a
Oh,
minute
got
and
it.
a half or something like that. So no problem. Can you
Okay.
hear me? Yes.
Yes. So I saw you had asked a few questions in the Q&A, and then when the Zoom booted me, the questions disappeared. But I know you had
Oh, really?
questions, so I just can't see them. But if you'd care to elaborate or retype them, I can
Okay.
answer those.
Here's one. And here's the other. Okay, can you see those?
Yes, I see a flow defaults and a Linux box questions.
Exactly. So I'll get to
Yes.
the flow defaults for a minute. If I could I share my screen?
With the way we have the webinar set up, we can't do share screens. So just try
Rats.
your best, and I'll do my best to help.
Okay, I'll lead you through it. If you could please create a new regular old flow.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And then let's go and set up input data.
Sure.
Okay. So call this one string with default. And click its pencil icon
Mm-hmm.
and change ignore to constant and type in Jeremy's default, whatever you like.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, done. Next line, if you could just, all right, call that one decimal default, decimal with default, whatever.
Yep.
Okay, change the type then to decimal.
Sure.
Okay, and again, hit the pencil icon, constant, whatever you want, 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Okay, now, so close this and save it, please.
Sure.
Okay, and then just hook up done to the red push pin. And that's it. Now, can you just not debug this, but run this? Oh, okay.
like that.
Yep. Now, you don't see the 1, 2, 3. You don't
Mhm.
see Jeremy's default, right?
Correct.
I disagree with that. I think you should see the defaults. Now, it turns out, you know, I've got such a flow, and I put in also a show pop-up window which displays them. It
Mhm.
turns out that if you were to do nothing but click the run button, that is, accept all the defaults, okay, the string default will be Jeremy's default, but the decimal will be 0. That is, the 1, 2, 3 is completely ignored and wiped out.
Got it. Got it. I see what you mean. Interesting. Let me just quickly view that myself.
Okay. Right. Now, don't do
Okay, so if
anything
I
but
do
click run.
nothing,
There you go.
yeah, we've got Jeremy's default 0. Interesting. Okay. And then obviously if I change it, it'll change it.
Right. Now, I did find one thing that you can do. So if you can go back into editing the flow,
Yep.
go to the inputs. If you click on each of the 2 inputs and click the checkbox that says can be null, okay, you do that with the other one.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Now, if you run this one, now don't do anything. See, the 0 doesn't show up because it
Mm-hmm.
can be null. Now, don't now
Right.
hit run, and you'll see that
And
it
now it
works.
does the 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Okay.
And so the only very minor drawback is, let's say I don't want the string Jeremy's default. I actually want a null string. There seems to be no way to override it. Yeah. Okay. So that's really a picky point. I think my major point here is the defaults aren't displayed.
Right. When
I-
you're trying to run it, you mean like you would hope that that would just appear in the box immediately.
Yeah. And then here's the thing, in several contexts, and one escapes me now, but there's several times you bring in a step or set up an input or something like that. But for example, there's a default, there's some Boolean property of it, and the default is that it's true. And as soon as you drag that in, you see the checkbox, it's a constant, and it is actually set on because that's a default. Right. So, anyway, I would just like to be able to see the defaults.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So that's my
Yeah, I
default
think
question.
yeah, this sticks out to me as a potential, maybe a possible DT. Because it seems odd, especially with the way that the 0 automatically appears unless you pick something
Yeah.
different and then it overrides your default.
Right. Well, it's
Um,
a numeric input, and it can't be null. So
right,
logically, it sets it to 0. But what it should do is set it to 1, 2, 3, which
right,
is
yeah.
what the designer, set it to. Okay. Well, anyway, yes, I have a ticket on it. So if I could move then. Now, are you operating on is your decisions on a server or on it's not your local machine,
No,
is it?
mine is my local machine at the moment.
Oh gosh, okay. Which is Windows or what?
Yes,
Okay. Well, we have a server, and that server is a Linux box. So
correct.
I wanted to talk, if I could, about the execute command step. I have this flow. I don't know if I can send it to you. That is, export it and send it to you. But I have a flow, and all it does is to accept from the user a command. You just type it in, and then what it does is to split it at the space. So it takes the first word, and that's the command, and then it removes the first word and joins the rest so that that becomes the rest of the command and that becomes the parameter string. Okay. The
Okay.
bottom line is, though, that if I send it a command that it just ls, all right, it's a Linux box, so it gives
Mhm.
me a list of the files that are in /opt/decisions
Right.
on the box. And even if I type in ls space -l space -h, I can even give it the name of a folder, a subfolder like data, right? So the
Yeah.
total command has 4 words: ls-l-h data. It splits off the ls. All the rest of it becomes the parameter string, and that command works. Now, however, if I say ls space star.xml, it says no such file or directory. But I know from the ls command that there are XML files in the current folder. So it seems like nothing with a wildcard works, which is very strange to me.
Got it. Okay.
And yes, I have a ticket.
Okay. Yeah. This, I guess the real question is, and I'm assuming the support member may have already asked their developers, it's very possible that this is I know that sometimes there's just limitations on what it can actually check. Um, like in a lot of cases, even just like creating a data structure, there's limitations on what you can name them because certain names can conflict with the defaults and things like that. It's very possible that it's just a general limitation, and there must be some other way that you can find that. Uh, if it's a limitation and you can't put things like maybe the dot is what's confusing it. Um,
I've
yeah, I don't
tried
have,
simply ls space star, and
yeah, and it
that's
doesn't do
it. And
anything
that doesn't do anything either.
interesting. Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with Linux. It's at least not using the steps and decisions with
Oh,
it.
neither do I. Trust me. I even had to look up the ls command on Google. I mean, the
Yeah.
last I really worked with Unix was in the late 70s. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I get
anyway,
that.
and that was Unix. That predates Linux, obviously.
Yeah, unfortunately, we use Linux for our training containers, for those that are going through our training programs, but we use it directly. We don't like run scripts through decisions that often with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that expertise is probably lost, unfortunately, on me, and I think it'll be best in the support. I wish I could help you answer that one quicker, but yeah, unfortunately, I think that's going to be something that the support team is going to have to help you
The
with.
thing is, my use case is that we have a server. Okay, there's a
Hmm.
lot of users, so not everybody can have full-blown decisions on their machine.
Right.
So we have a server. It happens to be a Linux box, and what we're doing is running all these flows to generate all these files that end up on the server, and we've got to operate on them. That is, it turns out, move them from place to place, and those commands that move them place to place have got to be run on the server. And I'd like to be able to say, all right, I know I've generated a whole bunch of XML files. Move all the XML files to whatever. But when I say all the XML files, that's star.xml. And I've conferred with a number of people here whose knowledge of Unix and Linux is a hell of a lot more recent and robust than mine. And yeah, ls star.xml is definitely how to do it.
Got it.
Oh. Okay. Well, I hope to hear back soon about those tickets then.
Yeah. I'll send him a message too, just make sure that you're looking for it, and then we'll see.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Yep, of course. Happy to do my best. All right. We got one more question waiting in the Q&A, and that's from Carter with a few different questions. So we can go ahead
Absolutely.
and start to work on those now.
Appreciate it. So 2 categories of question. The first one, I think first 2 we can tackle at the same time, has to do with data repeaters. So I've got a form that for this purpose, all it is a data repeater with a data repeater add button. And it's a text box with a sub dialog flow right next to it. And essentially the functionality that I'm looking for is you can hit the add, the add data repeater button. It adds a new record. You can type it in, but then if you click on the sub dialog flow icon next to it, which we're using the image of the trash can, once you click on that, it will delete that row of the data repeater.
Okay.
I know it's, or I say I know it's possible. I believe it's possible. I've seen flows that do it. I have an active form flow that updates the list that the data repeater relies on. I just don't have a trigger for that active form flow. And I think the way it's set up currently is the sub dialog flow creates a variable called like is button deleted. In the form that I've seen that it works, that is button clicked variable or whatever I called it is the trigger when value changes for that variable, is the trigger for the active form flow that gets the selected line, deletes it from the list. But I can't figure out how to get that variable from inside of the data repeater out to the form to act as a trigger.
Okay. Okay. So concept here, this is obviously not exactly what you're looking for, but right, we have our data repeater and you said there's a button here.
Yep.
And it's
Sub
a
dialog
sub dialog
flow.
button.
Yeah.
Right. And then within your sub dialog is where you're trying to remove the button or remove
So
the
within the sub dialog currently, all it does is the start step connects to the end step. On the end step, there's an output that's a Boolean value. That's defaulted to true. Doesn't matter what you name it. Is button clicked is, I think, what I've called it. And that's defaulted to true.
Got it.
Perfect. And that's all that this one does.
Okay.
And so then outside on the form, you've got your add button that adds the new data repeater.
Right.
Yep. And then you also have active form flow. Delete row, yeah, whatever. And it deletes an item in the list.
Right. And
then sets a control value again.
got it. Okay. So you got like a remove item from list or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the set control value step afterwards. And then what's the problem? You're having trouble finding the
This works. So item to remove is the selected item, form data, data repeater, selected item. And then I think the text or whatever they're using for that. Or, oh no, you change your list type, sorry. You're not using a string list type. Your
yeah, right.
data repeater is your travel, whatever.
That's what I had checked. And then your list is coming from your data repeaters.
Yep.
And then you're setting that output onto the data repeater.
100%.
Got it. probably don't care about this, but we can change it if we need to. Got it. Okay. So I got
And
that
so then
journaling set up.
the issue that I'm having is on the flow that I've seen that it works. There's a trigger. Like we need a trigger for the active form flow.
Right.
I want the trigger to be that clicked variable that you set within the subdialog flow.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how to bring that out one level onto the form and out of the data repeater.
Right. Okay. So we got this. That's setting that clicked true. My initial thought is something like we want like a Boolean value or something that would change. Whoops, I spelled that wrong. Not gonna change it. Something like this, but you can make it not visible to the user because I think what we need, right, is we need this to be able to go somewhere. And we would need this to be able to, right,
To
like
change that Boolean
update
value on the
that value,
form.
right? So
Yeah.
like if I made this with a create data instead as the Boolean value, my goodness, I've lost all of my ability to type today. Right, like if I made this a Boolean value, I should be able to set the control value or even just use the change data or something. And from here, I might be able to actually set on my form. It would be that's the travel date there. The Boolean value.
Because this is your
This is
form
hard.
data for the
This is the form data for the data repeater.
right? Okay.
Yeah, not for the other one.
Because
I don't know if we
this
can
is
do that
something
with
I
two.
wanted to do, but I didn't know how to reference the data repeater or the form that this lived in.
Right. I'll check something here.
That was the other thing I tried, was having an active form flow inside of the data repeater to do the same thing that we're doing in the active form flow outside of the data repeater. But I couldn't get
That's still going to be the
I
same.
couldn't set the input list for the form control.
Right. Let me check one thing real quick. This doesn't seem optimal. This is me, one of those things I think just playing around with. But part of me is wondering as maybe frustrating as it might be, if we have something like, like more hidden values, a space in here that can, 'cause it needs to be, right? The problem is, regardless of whether I use an active form flow or sub dialog or whatever, it's missing some place to send it outwards. And
Right.
if there's a value in my repeater, now that's going to be something that exists, right? If it's a value in my repeater, then now this is something that can actually exist if I look at values in my data repeater. So that if I'm setting up an active form flow, I have
You've
that
got your
value,
is
like,
early.
right, I have my like in checked item within my data repeater. So
Yeah.
you may be able to do that, utilize that there. The difference, I guess, is still the trigger of selecting that. But I mean, so the idea is, right, if I set an active form flow, I can trigger it. Oops, I didn't mean to add one. Right, my trigger can be a value change on my data repeater, right?
Okay.
So within my data repeater, if this button, right, this checkbox by default is false, right? This, if I click this, whether it's just an event button for my active form flow, which I think is just fine. I don't think you need a full sub dialog because you're not really using extra forms to appear. But if I click this, it'll repopulate this checkbox with a check. And then you can have an active form flow here that would say, like on the change, right, on a value change in my data repeater, check, I think you might need a rule first to check and see, is that checkbox true or false? If it's true, remove the item from the list and then set the control value of your data repeater. Did that rambling kind of make sense?
Yeah. Well, you have to loop through your entire list to find the checked value.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
I think
We
in
shouldn't
that
have
case
more
you would
than
have
like
to do that.
3.
Yeah. If that's the case, it's not going to be really big, then the loop shouldn't be too taxing. I think that's at least my initial thought on what that process would be. So you'd need, a value here. You can hide it if you don't want people to see it, right? So then when I click on this button, it'll change this to true. And then on a change in the data repeater, it'll check and see if that's true, then delete it.
Okay, I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, test that out.
On the
Hopefully
subject
that'll.
of data repeaters.
Yep.
Can we make this form dynamic so that the data repeater area grows with more data repeaters?
My initial thought is I don't think so. Well, that's actually this header test that I have open right now is that I had someone ask that question either last week or the week before in Lunch and Learn, that same question. Initially the testing seems like it doesn't automatically expand for you. It'll just kind of, the more you add to it, the more
You just
it'll
scroll and
just
scroll
make
and scroll.
a scroll bar for it.
Yeah.
Someone suggested that it's possible to make if you make like your entire form in like a vertical stack or something, it may help
I've
to
already
allow
tried
it to do
that.
that. But in my testing, I don't think it worked. That maybe it used to work, but it doesn't anymore.
Because like
Otherwise,
even in
I
the vertical
don't
stack,
think you
like the
can.
data repeater control is still
Yeah, the control
boxed.
itself stays within itself. Exactly.
Right.
So, and yeah, I did a lot of testing for that on that Lunch and Learn with changing for like resizable fields and stuff on the forum, and it still didn't do much. So I don't think that we can do that.
Okay, perfect. I was just asked to do that and was making sure that wasn't possible. Last question has to do with the first question asked on today's Lunch and Learn. Slightly different control though. It's the read Exel, like the runtime editable. So where you pass in your mapping into the Excel. So I've already got a table definition set up. I'm
Okay.
reading the Excel file into the table definition. In between the Excel file and when I read it in, I have a second screen that does a mapping exercise. So I already read in all of the elements, populate that on a second form. I've got a value list that shows here's what you have to map it to. They go ahead and map, say this field equals what this is supposed to be, so on and so forth. After the mapping screen, I build the CSV import data and have that as its own variable. And then in the import CSV or Excel runtime editable tool. The third one.
That one.
I pass in the file data. I pass in the mapping that I've already built.
Right.
But even though the mapping has, on this one, I think I have like 10 elements. Mapping has 10 elements. The file has 10 columns. All of my data is getting passed to the less columns error output. I didn't know why that would be.
Mm, That's a good question. So yeah, I know. Like obviously, it does exactly as it is. If it's expecting a certain number of columns, and whatever's actually going through is providing less than that. Like if this is expecting 30 columns and you've got 28 going through, it's going to go down that path. I guess my only thing that if I'm not 100% certain, um, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not certain what exactly this is checking to tell it which row to go down. I assume, have you looked at the documentation or documentation site over this step?
I've tried. I didn't find anything that was detailing exactly what.
Exactly what you're looking for?
This was
Yeah.
last week. So I guess when it says less columns error, that's defined by the output type or the what's the output type, I think. That output data type, yeah.
Yes, I think so.
So if I define a table definition in my output data type, but I have foreign keys inside of my table definition that my input file won't have, or even primary keys that are an identity field, would that cause the less columns error?
Possibly. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's, I don't know off the top of my head if that would actually do it. I think that's, I guess, the minor testing. I mean, and the difference is you can choose like what to do with that, right? If it has an error, do you want to add like a different outcome for it? Do you want to give you an exception? I don't know if you've messed with either of those, because that may also lead you in the right direction of why it's doing that. Like if you had this throw an
Yeah,
exception.
I was keeping just the output so that I knew what happened when I was looking at my data, but
It may be worth a test to just throw the exception on it and just see what that message is, because it may even
Okay.
tell you like what is the column, what columns are missing or whatever that it's doing that. And I don't know if that it says add output message. That might also give you some details. But even just like worth a quick test to see if that'll actually tell you what the problem is. And it may even direct you towards what is the less what's missing there, I guess.
okay, yeah. I will take a look at that. Appreciate it.
And then also real quick, I can post this link in the chat, but my colleague just showed me this. In our documentation about data repeaters, there actually is a remove data repeater row control if
Yeah,
you're in
they
version
just don't
8.18.
want that button there.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, then I would test what we discussed then if that's not going to be your use case.
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be that's the easiest solution to the problem, just not what
Right.
the UI wants.
But not what you want. That's fine.
All good. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, that concludes our lunch and learn today. It was a nice long one. Thank you so much, everyone who came today, stuck around for the whole thing, listened. If I didn't get to your questions, I apologize. We still have got lunch and learns the rest of this week. Not 100% sure who is leading tomorrow, but we will still have the lunch and learn tomorrow. So if you want to join again or have more questions, please ask and you can join tomorrow. And then we also have Jared and Robert on Wednesday and Thursday. Thank you so much for watching and joining today, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.